Getting into sim racing doesn't need to be as expensive as everyone claims it is. This is my personalized DIY build-it-yourself sim racing cockpit, and everything that you see on screen I was able to do for under $300, and I'm going to show you that you can too if you follow these simple steps. I came and checked out the local marketplace. Scrolling through here, you'll be able to find a really good deal in a short amount of time. They pop up very often. Wait for a good one. You'll find a barely used set for at least half off the price of new, and most of them are going to come with a shifter. I was able to get all three barely used like new for $125. Not that bad of a deal. I promise, for every new sim racer out there like you, there's at least two selling their gear for half off on the marketplace because they either ran out of time or they couldn't cut it out on the track. Next up, I knew I was going to need a place to sit. To buy a racing seat brand new is at least $150, and that's for a pretty entry-level one. I kind of envisioned my cockpit having a bit of a more realistic feel to it, so I wanted to pull a seat from a real car. I wanted the headrest to work, I wanted it to recline, I wanted it to raise and lower, and I also wanted it to come with the tracks. That way, when I mount it onto my racing cockpit, I could have the seat slide forward and backward depending on comfort and of a different feel for whatever kind of car I was driving. It was also important that I could pull the center console from the same car. A few basic hand tools and I could have a place to store equipment. I have cup holders, and more importantly, I have a place that I can mount the shifter in a very realistic way. It's pretty much a win-win situation, and it's not going to cost that much if I get this from a scrapyard. Your average scrapyard adventure is going to look a lot like this. There's going to be vehicles scattered all over the place. So depending what you're looking for, if you're willing to spend enough time, I guarantee it's going to be out there somewhere. I walked around for about an hour and a half before I ran into a car that had a seat and a console that I liked. I tore it apart and walked out to pay. At my yard, it's $30 for any seat from any car, $15 for any console. For $45, I was able to walk out with both the items that I needed. It doesn't really get much easier or cheaper than that. If you're also planning to do this, make sure you read the rules of the yard before you go. Where I'm from, you're not allowed to bring any kind of a power tool. It's all about elbow grease and using your hands. So make sure to check that before you get down there and get very disappointed. Last but not least, we want to think about the cockpit frame. To keep this cheap and easy, I recommend building it out of wood, but you can use whatever material you think is best that you can get your hands on for the right price. Now, we've got our wheel, we've got the shifter, and the pedals that we all need to get mounted in the right place. So keep that in mind when you're measuring this out. You don't want your shifter too high or too low that it's uncomfortable. You're going to have a wheel and your pedals that need to be mounted in. So consider running a piece of wood or other material underneath of them so you can run a bolt up from the bottom to keep these in place. When you get into some intense driving, you don't want your wheel or pedals moving on you. I recommended going with wood because, as you can see, at a local lumber yard, this is relatively cheap to get your hands on. I bought 6 2x4s in total, but only ended up using 4 of them. So for anywhere between $20 and $30, you can get all the wood you need for this project. Keep in mind, you are going to need to hit the bulk bin and get a handful of screws to make sure you can put this all together. Grab a few L brackets if you think this thing needs to survive a real-life rollover, and you're pretty much good to go for less than $40. Here's a pro tip for going with wood. If you don't have access to tools at home, most lumber yards will cut these for you free of charge, or at least for very low cost. So bring your plan so you know how many boards you need cut at what length, and they'll get them chopped up there for you. This saves having to do that portion at home. Now it's time to get to work and put this frame together. You don't have to build it the exact way that I'm going to show you, but make sure you do customize it to a way that's going to fit your needs, your space, and everything else that might have to be considered. The more wood you add here, the heavier it's going to be, and the more expensive it's going to cost. So try to keep all of your building materials at an absolute minimum. To build this in a similar style to me, we're going to break this into 2 views, top and side. From the top, looking straight down, you're basically going to have a rectangular box, something like this. From the side, it's just going to look like this for right now. To get some of these measurements, it's very important that you use the equipment you bought. So our chair's going to sit somewhere in here. So we want to make sure that the chair's railings can sit here and here. And the back of the chair can bolt into the back side of the rig sitting right over here. Now at this point, the chair will be in its furthest back position. So we need to look at putting pedals in here. So with the chair at its furthest back position, find a place that's going to look comfortable for your pedals and make sure that you sit in the seat and test this out. Once it feels comfortable, move the chair forward and make sure that there's a few other positions depending on the car you're driving, or if someone else is driving in your sim rig, it's still going to feel comfortable for them. Once you've found that spot that feels comfortable for your pedals, go ahead and put in a board there. This board is what's going to be attached to your pedals. You're going to run a bolt through here and into the bottom of your pedals, so when you step on them very hard, they're not going to move. This way, you've got a sturdy rig. You will have a spot up here that you can use for storage, or if you don't want that at all because you're tight on space, you can actually cut this off after the point that your pedals have attached to the rig. Now we need to put in a wheel. So going back to the side, we've got the side, which is our rectangle here, but we will have our chair sitting somewhere like this, and our pedals will likely be over here. What we want to do is grab another board at an angle and bring it up something like this. This is what's going to give us the boards to put our shelf for our wheel on. So once you've found this, again, make sure that this distance now is proper from your arms. So you're going to be sitting in this chair that you just installed, looking all happy and pretty, and with your arms being out, make sure that the wheel will feel comfortable at that point. This is crucial. This cut needs to be at the perfect angle so that it's not too high or too low when you attach a shelf to it to bolt your wheel into. This measurement is probably the most important one. The second one is definitely the distance from your chair to the pedals. That is super, super important. So make sure you spend some time here, rough it out on the floor. Don't screw anything or cut anything until you've done this for at least half an hour and you are very confident that those are the exact positions that you want. It's probably easier to do this with a friend so he can hold the tape measure for you and say, how about here? How about there? And make sure you really get this dialed in. Next up's the center console. So to do this, again, we want a simple, easy rectangle shape, the exact dimensions of our center console. The only difference here this time on the side view, we need this to actually be up a little bit higher. So instead, what we want to do here is make sure that we have some feet for the console to then sit on. So with these feet being here, they will raise this console over here up so that the table of the console will sit right in this area here. This allows for us to put our shifter exactly where we want it for our other arm to be able to reach that very easily. So it's basically two rectangles, one of which has legs. The measurement for these legs, again, have a friend help out because you want that to be somewhere in the perfect shifting range for you. So the measurement for these legs is, again, pretty darn crucial. Now that we're at this point, we want to put the final touches onto our build. So let's go ahead and attach our center console with a couple of bolts or screws so that it doesn't run away on us. Then there's a few key things we need to note. We must screw in our pedals over here. We cannot forget that those need to be bolted into the bottom of the rig. That is super important. The same as our wheel. There must be a couple screws running from the bottom of our shelf into our wheel to make sure it stays in place. The shifter is also important. There's holes in the shifter that you can run bolts in from your center console to make sure that that also does not move. Do not rely on the brackets. You will be in an intense situation when racing and they will fail on you and all hell will break loose. Don't make that mistake. Spend the 30 cents on the bolts, screw them in. They're not going to move. You're good to go. We put all the effort into building a rig to be able to race in. Now we need a way to be able to see the race. Single monitors is a little bit difficult. Triple monitors is very expensive. A used VR set like this will run you between $50 and $100 on the marketplace and completely change the way that you see racing. And that's the story of how I got into sim racing on a pretty tight budget, and a bit of a guide on how I hope I can help you do that too. So if any of this has helped you at all and is considering getting you into sim racing on a budget, please hit that like and follow button down below, because it helps me out a lot and it tells me the content that I'm bringing is at least being helpful to someone out there. If anyone has any questions about how or why I did something a certain way, please reach down out in the comments below. I will get back to every single one of them. And with any luck, I'll see you out on the track.